Here we are in historic downtown Plano, and let's talk about history.
Yeah.
How did downtown Plano get its roots, its start?
Well, this is the area where people first came to settle when they came to Plano many years ago. And in fact, the first property ever platted in Plano was at the southwest corner of 15th Street and K Avenue. And this was the business heart, the business center. And then right nearby was the Houston, Texas Central Railroad that came to Plano in 1872, and then a year later, on June 2nd, 1873, Plano was officially incorporated as a city.
There's some very old drawings of Plano in its
Yes.
early days.
Yes.
You see the downtown area, and you see just a few scattered homes and churches
Yes.
around the downtown area.
Uh-huh.
It was a very, very small rural community.
It was for many years up through about 1960. And then after 1960, things really started to change. That's when Plano began to develop as a suburban city at first. And then in the 1990s made that transition to a major employment center. And today is a major employment center in a city of over almost 191,000 people and with over 200,000 jobs in our community.
A lot of people may not realize, Steve, there were two devastating fires
Yes.
that really changed downtown Plano.
Yes, it did. The first fire took place not long after incorporation, 1881. And it burned down the city and all the buildings. They rebuilt. They decided to stay here. And then another devastating fire happened in 1895. And that one really changed things because instead of rebuilding with wood and having wood exteriors, it can be very bad for fire, especially when it gets dry and hot in the summer. They rebuilt with brick, and that's why we see all the brick buildings and the brick street today.
And now we want to try and preserve the downtown because of the nature of its historic value.
Yes, we do. Downtown Plano is considered to be a National Historic Register area, and it's very unique and captures the city's original history of where it began. And so we have downtown design standards, and we have heritage preservation procedures in place to help preserve downtown.
In a lot of these locations, we're talking about the reimagining. This place, downtown Plano, has become an arts district.
Well, this all began really in 2002 with the coming of the DART rail line, the red line. Now we have the red and the orange. And now it's become more of an arts district. We have McCall Plaza here, where we have live performances, and then we also have several art studios in our area. Some of our retailers are making that transition from antique malls to businesses people would like to see that sell art and have places to go for live music and to eat. And then plus we have a lot more people living downtown now too.
Steve, we're standing in the heart of the Douglas community.
Yeah.
Tell me the significance of why this is such an important community in Plano's history.
It's very important. First of all, this was one of the first places where people, no matter who they were, came to live and build their homes in Plano. This is where the city got started. Not too far, we have what they call the Old City Cemetery. It's where the people first were buried when they passed away. And then as the years progressed, a lot of people that were released from slavery, they came here to live in this area, and they found a community here in Plano. And then by 1925, it was pretty much a black community, and it was named the Douglas community around the school, the Frederick Douglass School.
We're standing in front of this old house known as the Thornton House.
Yes.
What is the historic significance of the Thornton House?
But what's really important about the Thornton House, this was the very first home that was ever owned by a person of color in Plano. And this happened, I think, back around the 1890s. And they were owned property, and they actually built a house. And so that was very significant at the time.
You said that the complexion, if you will, of the Douglas community is changing.
Well, what we're seeing, and it's really started about the 2000 census, and it's be carrying on, is it's starting to change from a black community to a Hispanic community. However, when we do have public meetings and get-togethers to talk about issues facing Douglas for planning, the African American community still comes out very strong, but it's starting to change over to more of a Hispanic community. The school that was here, it was called Frederick Douglass School. It served all the elementary grades up through high school. And then in the 1960s, the high school portion was closed, was integrated in.
And the old school became a...
The old school is now serves as a community center and also as the Boys and Girls Club of Collin County.
Steve, we're in the RT district, which stands for Research Technology.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how did the RT district get started?
Well, it started back in the late 1990s, and the city of Plano was trying to take advantage of the technology boom that was occurring and get ahead of that and allow for a space for that to take place.
Now, it's changed through the years. Tell me a little bit about the metamorphosis from what originally was intended to what it's become today.
Originally, it was intended to be a place where you'd have office, research, technology, design, something that's based on the science, technology, engineering, mathematic fields. And that's how it started. Also try to encourage some redevelopment of our light industrial area. And today it still serves that role. And now today we're starting to see a transition more into how far or how much should it extend. And right now where we're at is at the border, having the research technology to the west of Los Rios, and then having residential development more to the east.
There were some challenges that came up through the years. What were some of the biggest challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge was just the fact that the zoning district went out as far east as Rowlett Creek. Seeing that that wasn't going to work, so it was too far away from transportation access, particularly the President George Bush Turnpike, and getting to the airports quickly. So the change said, okay, to the east will allow for other types of development. It turned out to be residential. There's still a great demand for that here in the city, even up to this day. And then to the west, where it's closer to the transportation infrastructure, will allow for the research technology to continue.
Anytime you talk about economic development and large companies moving to North Texas, there's a pretty intense competition between cities. I understand we have a pretty healthy competition with Richardson over some of these businesses.
Yes, we do. There is a lot of intense competition, particularly for the same types of businesses. And one of the things that we can offer is that we do have this area where businesses can come, and we also have space where they can relocate, especially today with office space freeing up from one structure to the other. And so this is close to the transportation infrastructure. It's already in place, utilities are already in place, and we can provide two services immediately.
And as we can see behind me here, we still have new companies that are coming to the RT district and building.
Yeah, there's still a few areas of land that are undeveloped. They're near this location and can take and have some fresh new development concepts if they wanted, or also can encourage redevelopment as well.
How about the future? Where do you see the RT district going in the future?
I think that the future that will continue to focus in on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics type of businesses. And I also see it as a spurting redevelopment possibly of our light industrial areas, the old office warehouses that are more to the west of us, near Jupiter and K Avenue.
Here we are in East Plano, in one of the older neighborhoods in East Plano. You were saying that most of the construction here and the development happened in the 50s and 60s?
Yes. The first areas for Plano's suburban growth actually took place in the eastern part of the city. A lot of people don't think about that. And it started from the downtown area, went east towards Rowlett Creek. And what we're seeing right now is a good example of what we call mid-century architecture. Homes built in the 1950s, 1960s, and as we move further east, we'll get to the 70s and the 80s. During the 70s is when Plano went west, and then it wasn't until after the 1980s that Plano started to go further east again to get some to our newest homes that were just built in the last decade.
So when you look at Plano and its suburban growth, where we're standing, this neighborhood is really where that started.
It is, that's correct. What's interesting is that one of the neighborhoods called Briarwood actually had some signs and advertisement we've seen from the 1960s that if you didn't go and get your house that day, it would be too late. But these were the hot selling properties back in the time. One thing about East Plano that is really nice is the fact that there's a wide variety of housing here. You have the urban living in downtown, you have older homes from the 50s and 60s and 70s in the eastern part of the city. Over in the far east, you have the brand new style homes. You find a wide variety of housing options within a close proximity of each other.
This construction that we see here in East Plano is what used to be Plano Market Square, but this is also the first development of the Envision Oak Point plan.
Yeah.
What is Envision Oak Point?
Envision Oak Point is a unique plan. It's a small area plan that's focused on the land that's basically bound by Spring Creek Parkway, K Avenue, the Dallas area Rapid Transit Railroad, down to the creek that goes along Parker Road and north of the village estates there. And this is where it's envisioned for redevelopment of an aging retail site, as well as incorporating existing development of a multifamily along K Avenue, south of Spring Creek, and encouraging new development, particularly in the LeBon Farm areas and just across the street from the college.
Before the City Council approved Envision Oak Point, there were a lot of voices in this community that was heard. Tell me about the process.
Well, it's a long process. It started about 2 years before the plan was adopted in 2018, and it involved getting public feedback and informing people about what was going to go on, what was going to happen with the Oak Point plan, and get their feedback about what they wanted to see. Also involved meeting with stakeholders, the school district, the college, as well as the property owners here about what their envision was and what they would like to see for return on their investment for future development.
What is the benefit of having a plan like this for a rather large section of this area of Plano?
Well, what's really important is that there's a lot of complex issues here. We have land that's never been developed yet, never been built on, plus we have land with old development that needs to have some change. And so in order to go from one extreme to the other, it's good to have a plan to help us through the process. What can we hold on to? What needs to change? And what are some ideas about new development? And how can it all be tied together into something that will bring people to the area and help it to experience success in the long run?
Both residentially and commercially?
That is correct, yes.
Now we're moving to Central Plano.
Yes,
the growth here was a little bit different, though, than what initially started with downtown in the east.
Yes, it is. It's a much different. Here we had really large landowners that owned acres and acres, hundreds of acres of land. And when they sold it, they tend to sell off large portions of it. And so what you see here is you'll see neighborhoods that might date from the 1970s or 1980s and 1990s, but they're really large. They might contain several hundred to several thousand homes. And that's how this area was developed. What we're seeing right now is an example of infill.
What is infill?
Infill development is where you have existing development on all four sides with utilities and water lines, electricity, and road infrastructure all ready to go. And you have a portion of the property in the middle that for whatever reason has not been developed yet. And what it really encourages today is if you want to do some development, instead of going out to the edge of a city, think about these areas that are ready to go. And all you have to do is just plug into the existing infrastructure, and then you can start building homes.
When we were on the east side, you talked about the variety of different homes that were available. Here it was a little bit different when we had these large communities. A lot of similar homes were built.
Yes, that's true. A lot of the western part of our city that we're in right now, especially Central Plano, are just large areas of homes built in a certain time period. And what's interesting about it's not only homes, but it's the streets, the water lines, the sewer lines, infrastructure, everything was built that same time. So when it all begins to age, become 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it all ages together. And so especially the infrastructure have to think about replacements.
We're standing on what used to be the part of the Haggard farm.
That's right.
Obviously there is still some of the farm available. What we're looking at with these homes, was really what you described as infill.
It is.
On what used to be farmland.
Yes. This used to be a part of the Haggard Farm here. This is the small area that was left of it. It's known as a Centennial Farm, 1884 and 1984. It's where they had their homestead. And what we're standing on was actually the ground that they used to grow feed for livestock. And then they decided it's time to start to develop in 2011. They had it rezoned, and then they started to build homes. And this neighborhood here is a good example of that, and it was finished like around the mid-2010s.
Steve, we're in Legacy. The metamorphosis of Legacy is just incredible. It started out as a corporate business park.
Yes.
Right? And tell me a little bit about the history. And really, Ross Perot was behind the initial idea.
Yes, he was. Ross Perot, he was looking for a new location for his business, electronic data systems. And he wanted to build up in an area where he was close to people who had the talent and the training to be able to work at his facility. And yet he also wanted to establish a corporate campus environment. And so he chose about 2,700 acres of this area up here in northwest Plano for this park to take place.
The original plan, from what I understand, was just a few corporations.
Yes.
But then he bought more land and it exploded into dozens and dozens of companies.
It has. And some of these big properties have become smaller with more companies like Countrywide coming in and just Capital One coming to locate here, the Children's Medical Center coming in here to locate. And so there's been quite a bit of growth over the years. Legacy was kind of out ahead of things in the fact that the people who were looking for jobs were coming out of school were wanting to have work more in an urban environment where live, work, play were all in the same area.
Right, so the next phase was the west side of the tollway. We had the J.C. Penney headquarters. They started selling off land.
Yes.
And they eventually moved from the property, which was a whole nother transformation.
Yes.
The birth of Legacy West.
And this is another, it's kind of like a rebirth of Legacy in some ways. What's really special about this area is this is where we start to see the development of Plano going up. Instead of it spreading out as they did with the corporate campuses with J.C. Penney's, the large building, electronic data systems, large buildings, not very tall. Now we're starting to go up because there's just not the land available as there was in the past. So we're starting to see 20, 30-story buildings, giving Plano more of a downtown office environment feel up in this area. And the same thing is true not only for here, but another development right across the highway known as Granite Park.
And the corporate relocations started back again too. We
They
started
did.
seeing some of the nation's largest companies.
Yes.
Toyota,
Yes.
Liberty Mutual.
JP Morgan Chase Bank, about 2014, 2015 or so, began to attract these companies. In fact, Toyota, they were looking for a presence in the middle of the country where they could be close to the east and to the west, particularly by air, but located in an large urban environment. And even though Plano's not in the middle of the country as far as east, west, north, south, we are in the middle of the country in terms of between the east and the west coast, and that's why they chose this area.
Steve, we're in North Plano now, just off Hedgecoats Road, between Custer Road and Preston. This area, again, was a little bit different from what we saw in Central Plano. How so?
This area of land, particularly between Custer Road over towards Preston, down to around Legacy Drive, this is one of the last areas of big segments of land that were annexed into the city. And a lot of this did not happen until the 1990s and later. And what is different is to have a lot of new housing that was built here. Another huge difference is the development pattern. And instead of having the four-corner retail that we see further south in Central Plano, up here we have some intersections of major thoroughfares that don't have any retail development, or maybe it's just on two. So you start to see that to fade away. Another big thing about this area is just how this encouraged a big change starting in Plano's population and increasing its diversity with a lot of people from the countries of Asia moving in.
And that led to also some differences in sports that you see around
Yes.
town, athletics. How
Yes,
so?
this big change in Plano's population, particularly in the last 30 years, has really challenged the staff to look at different services that they provide for people. What do they want? And when it came to Parks and Recreation, what has happened is we have a huge influx of Indian population. And as a result, Russell Creek Park, not too far from here, has become a big center for cricket matches.
Steve, something else we saw here in North Plano that we didn't really see anywhere else in Plano was families putting their kids in additional school districts. How did that come about?
This area is divided into two different school district service areas. To the south of McDermott, over to Preston Meadow Drive, what we see is the Plano Independent School District. To the north of McDermott and west of Preston Meadow, what we see is the Frisco Independent School District. And there are about 9,000 students, school-age children, that live in this area that attend the Frisco schools.
We're in West Plano. As a matter of fact, as far west as you can go in Plano. What makes this neighborhood unique?
One of the first is topography. This area actually has a lot of rolling landscape, hills, valleys, and you can really see that when you go visit Arbor Hills Nature Preserve, which is just to the south of here. Second feature is the fact that this is actually in Denton County. A lot of people don't realize that the city of Plano is within two counties, Collin and Denton. Now, majority of Plano is in Collin, but this small area of the city is in Denton County. And then another issue too is the fact that this part of the city is served by the Louisville Independent School District. So we still have another issue there where we have multiple school districts serving our community.
How does that happen where part of Plano is in a different county and a different school district?
Well, city boundaries, they can be in any county that they wish to be in. A city can expand it to several counties. Then another issue too is just where is the land available to annex. And for Plano, all this area here used to be a part of a large area called Hebron, and it was an agricultural community. And what they wanted to do was to maintain their agricultural atmosphere and amenity and ambiance. And as people wanted to develop this area, they would take and disannex the land and put up for cities to compete against each other to determine who would offer the best services and amenities for the developer. And for this particular area, Plano won, and they were able to annex to have this be a part of their city. As far as school districts are concerned, school district boundaries were set many, many years ago. It says, Plano Independent School District, which means they're independent of cities or counties or anything. They can decide where they want to have a school district at, their boundaries. And they use the county line. In Collin County, you're in Plano. In the Denton County, you're in the Louisville Independent School District. And so that's how that happens.
And how about the style of houses? We see a lot of upscale homes here,
yes,
like other parts of Plano, but was this area different?
Yes.
How so?
Yes. It is different in the fact that it's primarily some of the most expensive housing that you will find within the city of Plano. And in fact, not too far away is a community called Kings Gate, where we have houses that are priced well over $1 million. And it's also one of the very few gated communities that we actually have in the city. We don't have many of them, but it is one of the very few. Another thing that's also unique about it is we have a lot of house on a small amount of land. And so this is where you really see it, of many homes that are close together. They have a large living space, multiple stories, 2 stories, but yet maybe only might have a yard area of 6,000 or so square feet.
We're in Heritage Creekside. This is one of the newest developments in Plano. What are we seeing here at Heritage Creekside?
What we're seeing here is just a rethinking of what the original concept was for this development. For many years, this was a planned development that was to allow for multi-story office buildings with retail that provide business services to those offices. And the concept has changed. This is our very first urban mixed-use zoning district. where we actually designed zoning around an urban village type development.
This is a huge property bordered by Plano Parkway,
Yes.
George Bush Turnpike,
Yes.
Custer Road, and Alma Road.
That's
We
right.
already see some single-family housing, multi-family housing.
Yes.
There's some restaurants on the east end of the
Yes.
property. What else can we expect to see on this large parcel of land?
We have another multifamily complex that could be constructed here, and we can also have another area where we're going to have single-family attached homes that will be built. But primarily what is left to finish it out will be office development. Again, that multi-story office development that was a part of the original planned development for this area.
It's no secret that Plano's almost built out.
Yes.
We don't have much land space to develop.
No.
So after this development is complete, what happens next in the future?
Well, I think what's going to be happening with Plano for the future are our development opportunities, and we've been saying this for almost going on now 10, 15 years. And our development opportunities are going to be infill, and again, that's an existing lot that for some reason has never been developed. Another was going to be basically redevelopment, where we already have something in place, it's no longer functioning or serving its use. It's time for people to think about something different or something new at that location. I think that that's what we're going to see for Plano in the future, because right now we only have around a little over 4% of our land left for future development, and almost all of that land is zoned and recommended for commercial development.
Steve, a lot of longtime Plano residents may remember what we're standing in front of, the old
Yes.
Collin Creek Mall.
Yes.
You say this started off as soccer fields before they built the mall. When was that?
I've had people who have lived in Plano for many years told me where they could go and they could bring their children for soccer practice and soccer matches, and so it served in that facility for a while. But then with US 75 coming and having retail development for a growing city, this became the site for Collin Creek Mall, which actually opened in 1981.
And the Collin Creek Mall was quite the hot spot for many, many years for
It
people who
was.
lived in Plano and the surrounding area.
Yes, this was the first major shopping center that a person would come upon. They were coming south out of Oklahoma and then in towards Texas and to Dallas. And so it was a major shopping mall. The closest thing near it probably would have been Richardson Square Mall, but this was Collin Creek, and it was really had a big following, and it was just a wonderful place. I've been here many times for shopping and eating, and it's just a great place, very well taken care of.
Throughout this tour, we talk a lot about change.
Yes.
And a word I like to use, metamorphosis.
Yes.
We're seeing that happen with the old Collin Creek Mall.
Yes.
What's going to happen here now?
Well, what they're going to do is create more of an urban center community called Collin Creek. And it's going to become a place where many people live. There's going to be 2,300 multifamily units here, 500 single family units, 300 independent living facility units, and that's basically retirement housing for people age 55 and older. They're going to have retail and office and hotel space. And so it's going to be a major redevelopment.
We hear a lot about these urban village settings
Yes.
where you can live, work, and play
Yes.
all at the same place. This is actually going to be a larger version of an urban village, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's true. And it's also going to take and to connect in, hopefully, with downtown and encourage development from there to keep going down 15th Street and to come together and have a Collin Creek and then downtown Plano. And yes, it is.
And Steve, when you look at it, we're actually looking at the remnants of the Collin Creek Mall. It's
That's right.
really neat that the developers are incorporating some of the mall into the development.
It's a very interesting concept to do that because, like I say, that it's over 40 years old, and then they'll give you a little sense of history, of time, about why it was the way it is. But there's also going to be quite a bit of new, and right now what they're really focusing in on is just clearing the lots and getting ready for the new development, particularly with single-family development that's going to occur from where we see the buildings right now over towards Alma Drive.
We heard a lot of really emotions when they closed the mall for the
Yes.
last time, a
Yes.
lot of people really had a lot of deep feelings
Yes.
about this location as a mall.
It was a great social gathering place. It was a place for teenagers to hang out at in Plano during the 1990s, and it was just a really good place. Had a lot of good quality retailers that were not too expensive, but yet had good merchandise like Dillard's, and Sears, and J.C. Penney's, and Mervyn's, if people remember that, and Macy's.
I remember when the city leadership was trying to find a developer to
Yes.
do something with this property.
Yes.
I remember they talked about the importance of this being the gateway to Plano from the
Yes.
south
Yes.
in one of the major corridors.
Yes.
How important is this development to the future of Plano?
Well, I think it's very critical because it's right here at the junction of US Highway 75 and the President George Bush Turnpike. And especially whenever you see those elevated lanes of President George Bush Turnpike, because the main lanes are the top. And you look around and you see, here is the mall, here is the site. And to see, look over and see a vibrant urban village and activity center, that makes you want to go there and visit it and draw people in. And I think that is the big key to it.